A slave girl discovers her master's wife's hidden abolitionist network. In the sultry summer of 1852, deep in the heart of Virginia's rolling countryside, lay Willow Creek Plantation, a sprawling estate of white-columned grandeur surrounded by endless fields of swaying cotton. The air was thick with the scent of earth and blooming magnolias, but beneath the beauty lurked the harsh reality of a world built on chains and toil. Willow Creek belonged to Master Elias Harrington, a stern man in his 50s with silver-streaked hair and eyes as sharp as a hawk's. He had inherited the land from his father and expanded it into one of the most profitable cotton operations in the county. Elias ruled with an iron hand, believing firmly that order and discipline were the keys to prosperity. His wife, Mrs. Evelyn Harrington, was a graceful woman of 40, with soft auburn curls and a quiet demeanor that hid depths few suspected. To the outside world, she was the perfect Southern lady, elegant, devout, and devoted to her home. Overseeing the daily labors was Mr. Thomas Whitaker, a rough-hewn man hired from the North years ago. Whitaker was known for his unyielding drive. He pushed the field hands from dawn until dusk, his whip cracking like thunder when quotas fell short. Living in a modest house near the slave quarters was his only son, young Elias Whitaker, named after the master in a gesture of loyalty. At 22, young Elias was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-browned skin and kind hazel eyes that often betrayed a gentleness his father despised. He had grown up on the plantation, helping with chores from boyhood, and though he followed his father's commands, a quiet unease stirred in his heart about the way things were. Among the enslaved folk who toiled under the relentless sun was a young woman named Lila. She was 19, with skin like polished ebony and eyes that sparkled with an inner fire. Born on Willow Creek, Lila had known no other life. Her mother had passed when she was small, taken by fever, and her father worked in the distant tobacco barns. Layla was assigned to the big house as a housemaid, dusting parlors, serving meals, and tending to Mrs. Harrington's needs. She moved with quiet grace, her head often bowed, but her mind was sharp and observant. In stolen moments, she dreamed of stories her grandmother had whispered, tales of far-off places where people walked free. The days at Willow Creek followed a rigid rhythm. Long before sunrise, the bell clanged from the overseer's yard, rousing the field hands to the cotton rows. They bent low under the weight of sacks, picking the fluffy bowls until their fingers bled, singing low spirituals to ease the ache in their backs. Keep moving, keep moving. Whitaker would bark from atop his horse, his voice cutting through the humid air. Master Harrington don't pay for idleness. Young Elias often rode alongside his father, tallying the weights at day's end. But unlike his father, he avoided the whip, offering quiet words instead when someone faltered. One sweltering afternoon in late July, as storm clouds gathered on the horizon, Layla was in the big house polishing the silver in the dining room. Mrs. Harrington entered, her silk skirts rustling softly. "Layla, dear," she said gently, her voice like a cool breeze. "Bring some lemonade to the veranda when you're done. It's dreadfully hot today." "Yes, ma'am," Layla replied softly, keeping her eyes downcast. As Layla prepared the tray in the kitchen, she overheard the cook murmuring to another maid about the master's latest purchase, a new batch of field hands arriving soon. The words weighed heavy on her heart. Carrying the tray outside, Layla stepped onto the wide veranda where Mrs. Harrington sat fanning herself. In the yard below, young Elias was helping unload supplies from a wagon. Sweat glistened on his forehead as he lifted heavy crates. Mrs. Harrington noticed Layla's gaze lingering a moment too long. "He's a strong one, that Whitaker boy," she commented idly. "Works hard, like his father." Layla nodded quickly and poured the lemonade, her hand steady despite the flutter in her chest. She had seen young Elias many times, passing in the fields, or when he brought messages to the house. He always offered a polite nod, unlike the cold stares from others. That evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Layla walked back to the quarters, a row of small cabins huddled together like weary souls. Smoke rose from cooking fires, and children played quietly in the dirt. Inside her cabin, Layla sat by the flickering light of a single candle, mending a dress. Her thoughts wandered to the world beyond the plantation fences. She had heard whispers from runaways who passed through years ago, stories of a secret path north, guided by stars and kind strangers. But such dreams felt distant, impossible. Meanwhile, in the overseer's house, young Elias sat at the table with his father. "You were too soft on that lazy field hand today," Whitaker grumbled, carving into his supper. "A firm hand keeps him in line." Elias poked at his food. "He was sick, Pa. Whipping him wouldn't have helped the crop." His father snorted. "That's why you'll never make a proper overseer. This world's got rules, boy. White in color don't 1009 in kindness. It leads to trouble." Elias fell silent, staring out the window toward the big house lights twinkling in the distance. Little did anyone know, the threads of fate were already weaving tighter. A chance encounter was coming that would change everything. The next morning dawned misty and cool, a rare respite. Lila was sent to the creek to fetch water for the house laundry. The path wound through a grove of willows, their branches drooping like weary guardians over the sparkling water. As she filled her buckets, humming a soft melody her mother had taught her, footsteps approached. It was young Elias, leading a horse to drink. "Mornin', Layla," he said politely, tipping his hat. She startled, nearly spilling the water. "Mornin', sir." He knelt to check the horse's hoof, glancing up. "No need for, sir, just Elias." Layla hesitated, then nodded. "The water's clear today." He smiled faintly, the first real smile she'd seen from him directed her way. "Reckon the rain helped. You sing real pretty." Her cheeks warmed. "Just an old song." They stood in awkward silence for a moment, the creek babbling between them. Then Elias cleared his throat. "I best get back. Paul be wonderin'." As he mounted and rode off, Layla watched him go, her heart beating a little faster. It was nothing, she told herself, just words by the water. But in the days that followed, their paths crossed more often. Elias would find excuses to pass the big house gardens where Layla tended flowers for Mrs. Harrington. A nod here, a quiet, good day there. One afternoon, as thunder rumbled again, Layla hurried to close the shutters. A loose one banged wildly, and she reached high, struggling. "Here, let me." Elias appeared suddenly, securing it with ease. "Thank you," she whispered, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his eyes. Their hands brushed as he stepped back. A spark passed between them, innocent, yet undeniable. From that day, stolen glances became the secret rhythm of their days. Elias would leave a wildflower on the garden bench where Layla sat during breaks. She would smile shyly when passing him in the yard. Mrs. Harrington noticed Layla's lighter step, her brighter eyes, but said nothing. In her own heart, secrets brewed, ones far deeper than young love. As autumn approached, the cotton bolls burst open like white clouds, and the harvest frenzy began. Tension hung in the air like the coming frost. Young Elias wrestled with growing feelings he knew his father and the world would never accept. Layla dreamed of a kindness she'd never known. And in the big house, late at night, Mrs. Harrington penned letters by candlelight, sealing them carefully before hiding them away. The story of Willow Creek was only beginning, a tale of hidden hearts, dangerous truths, and love that dared to bloom in the shadows. The cotton harvest of 1852 pressed on like a relentless tide. By September, the fields of Willow Creek were white as far as the eye could see, and every hand, free or enslaved, worked from the first hint of light until the stars appeared. The air rang with the low songs of the field workers, melodies that carried sorrow and hope in equal measure. But beneath the rhythm of labor, quieter currents were stirring. Layla's days in the big house grew longer. Mrs. Harrington had taken to hosting small gatherings, tea with neighboring ladies, or evenings when the master invited planters to discuss prices and politics. Layla served silently, refilling cups and clearing plates, her presence barely noticed by the guests. Yet her sharp eyes missed nothing. The way Mrs. Harrington's smile tightened when the men spoke of tightening patrols, or how she excused herself early on certain nights. Elias Whitaker found himself drawn more and more to the big house under any excuse he could invent. A message from his father about the gin house repairs. A question about feed for the mules. anything that let him pass through the gardens or linger near the kitchen door. One warm evening, after the harvest hands had been fed their meager supper, Layla slipped away from the quarters. She often walked to the old willow grove by the creek when the moon was bright, needing the quiet to breathe freely. The plantation slept uneasily, dogs chained, overseer's house dark, but the grove felt like a world apart. She had just settled on a fallen log, letting the cool night air soothe her weary shoulders, when soft footsteps sounded on the path. "Layla?" Elias's voice was low, uncertain. She rose quickly, heart pounding. "What are you doing here?" "I saw you leave the quarters," he admitted, stepping into the moonlight. He wore his shirt sleeves rolled up, hat in hand. I wanted to speak with you. Alone." Layla glanced toward the distant lights of the big house. "We shouldn't. If your pa finds out." "He won't," Elias said firmly, though his eyes betrayed worry. "I made sure no one followed." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the gentle lap of the creek and the whisper of leaves overhead. Elias took a cautious step closer. "I think about you all the time, Layla. More than I ought to. More than is safe." Her breath caught. No white man had ever spoken to her with such gentleness, such honesty. "You don't know me, Elias. Not truly." "I know you're kind," he said softly. "I see how you help old Mariah when her knees ache, how you share your cornbread with the children. I know you hum those songs when you think no one's listening. And I know you deserve better than this place." Layla looked away, tears pricking her eyes. "Deserving don't change anything." He reached out, hesitating, then gently touched her arm. "Maybe not, but I want to know you more. If you let me." She should have pulled away. Every story whispered in the quarters warned against this. Kind words from a white man led only to pain. But Elias's touch was light, respectful, and his eyes held no demand, only longing. "I come here most nights the moon is full," she whispered finally. "If you want to talk." A slow smile broke across his face, lighting the shadows. "I'll be here." From that night, the Willow Grove became their secret sanctuary. They met when they could, once or twice a week, never long enough to raise suspicion. Elias brought small gifts: a ribbon he'd bought in town, a piece of real sugar candy, a worn copy of a book of poems he'd found in the master's library. Layla read the poems by moonlight, tracing the words with careful fingers. She had learned letters from an old house slave years ago, practicing in the dirt with a stick. Now Elias helped her sound out harder passages, his voice patient and warm. "You have a quick mind," he told her one night as they sat side by side on the log. "Quicker than most folks I know." She laughed softly, the sound like music in the quiet. "Don't let your pa hear you say that." His expression darkened. "Pa thinks the world's set in stone, that some folks are meant to rule and others to serve. But I've been reading things. Pamphlets that come through town. Ideas from up north." Layla's eyes widened. "You mean about freeing slaves?" He nodded slowly. "Some say it's wrong to own another person, that all men and women are born with the right to liberty." Hope flickered in her chest, fragile as a candle flame. "Do you believe that?" Elias met her gaze steadily. "I'm starting to." They sat in silence after that, the weight of his words settling between them. When it was time to part, he stood and offered his hand to help her up. This time she took it, and for a moment their fingers lingered together. Back in the quarters, Layla lay awake on her thin pallet, heart racing with new dreams. Across the yard, Elias stared at the ceiling of his room, wrestling with feelings he had no name for. But their secret meetings did not go entirely unnoticed. One late October night, as frost began to silver the grass, Mrs. Evelyn Harrington sat at her writing desk in the lamplight. She had just finished a letter, carefully worded, addressed to a trusted friend in Philadelphia. Inside were details: names of those ready to flee, dates when patrols would be light, a request for funds to bribe a river boatman. She sealed it with wax, then slipped it into a hollowed-out Bible on her shelf, the same Bible she sometimes pressed into Layla's hands with instructions to dust it carefully. On this night, however, she paused at her window. From the upper floor she could see the distant grove and the faint outline of two figures parting beneath the willows. Her lips pressed into a thoughtful line. She had long suspected the growing tenderness between the overseer's son and her housemate. Part of her heart ached for them, the cruelty of a world that would punish such innocent affection. Another part worried. Love made people reckless, and recklessness could unravel everything she had worked years to build. The next morning, Mrs. Harrington called Lila into her private sitting room, a rare summons. "Close the door, child," she said gently. Lila obeyed, hands clasped in front of her apron. Mrs. Harrington studied her for a long moment. "You've been looking happier these past weeks. Brighter, somehow." Lila kept her eyes on the floor. "Just glad the harvest is near done, ma'am." A soft smile touched the mistress's lips. "I think it's more than that." She rose and crossed to Layla, lifting the girl's chin with a gloved finger. "Be careful, Layla. Hearts are fragile things, and this world is not kind to those who love across its lines." Layla's breath hitched. "I don't know what you mean, ma'am." "I think you do." Mrs. Harrington's voice remained gentle, but there was steel beneath it. "Young Elias is a good soul, but he is still his father's son, and his father answers to my husband. Promise me you'll guard yourself." Tears welled in Layla's eyes. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Harrington hesitated, then reached into her pocket and drew out a small silver locket on a chain. "This was my mother's. Wear it close to your heart. Let it remind you that you are precious, no matter what anyone says." She fastened it around Layla's neck. The metal was cool against her skin. "Now go about your duties," the mistress said, turning back to her desk. "And remember, some secrets are heavier than others." Layla left the room trembling, the locket hidden beneath her dress. She did not know then that Mrs. Harrington had just entrusted her with far more than a piece of jewelry. As November chill crept in, and the last cotton was gin, tension thickened on Willow Creek. Rumors reached the plantation of increased patrols on the roads north. Slave catchers paid extra for runaways. Master Harrington doubled the night watch, and old Whitaker prowled with fresh vigilance. Yet the meetings by moonlight continued. One frosty night, Elias arrived breathless. "I've been thinking," he whispered urgently. "There might be a way to get you north. I've heard whispers in town. People who help." Layla's heart leaped and then sank. "You'd risk everything? For me?" "I'd risk anything," he said fiercely, taking both her hands. "I love you, Layla." The words hung in the cold air like stars. She searched his face and saw only truth. "I love you too," she breathed. They kissed then, softly, tentatively, the first and only kiss they would dare beneath the willows. It tasted of hope and fear and the sharp sweetness of forbidden fruit. Neither noticed the faint rustle in the underbrush nearby, nor the shadow that slipped away toward the big house. Secrets were piling higher at Willow Creek, and the threads holding them together were growing perilously thin. Winter settled over Willow Creek like a heavy quilt, muffling the world in frost and silence. The cotton fields lay bare, stalks brittle and brown, waiting for spring plows. Work shifted indoors, repairing tools, smoking meat, mending clothes. For the enslaved, it meant a slight easing of the endless sun, but never true rest. Patrols rode the roads more often now, lanterns swinging in the cold night as they hunted rumors of unrest. Layla and Elias continued their stolen meetings, though the cold made them shorter and riskier. They met deeper in the willow grove, wrapped in whatever warmth they could steal. Layla in an old shawl, Elias in his wool coat. Breath fogged between them as they spoke in whispers, hands clasped to share heat. One December evening, with the first light snow dusting the ground, Elias arrived carrying a small bundle. "I brought you something," he said, eyes bright despite the chill. He unwrapped a pair of soft leather gloves, far finer than anything Layla had ever owned. "Found them in town," he explained. "Said they were for my sister back north, so Paul wouldn't question it." Layla slipped them on, flexing her fingers in wonder. They fit perfectly, keeping the bite of winter at bay. "You shouldn't spend your money on me," she murmured, but her smile betrayed her joy. "It's my money," he replied firmly, "and there's nowhere I'd rather spend it." He drew her close then, wrapping his arms around her. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady thump of his heart. For a few precious minutes, The world narrowed to just the two of them. No plantation, no chains, no cruel laws. I've been asking careful questions in town, Elias whispered into her hair. There's a man, a Quaker, who helps folks north. He passes through Richmond sometimes. If we could get you to him. Lila pulled back, searching his face. And what about you? You come with me. He hesitated, pain flickering in his eyes. I want to. God knows I do. But Pa, the plantation. I don't know if I could leave everything behind. Not yet. Disappointment stung her, but she understood. Elias was torn between worlds, his father's expectations pulling one way, his heart the other. We'll find a way, she said softly, more to comfort herself than him. Somehow. They kissed again, longer this time, the snow falling gently around them like silent blessings. But danger was closing in. Old Whitaker had grown suspicious of his son's late-night walks. Boy's been mooning around like a lovesick calf, he muttered to Master Harrington one evening in the master's study, over glasses of brandy. Sneaking off when he thinks I'm asleep. Elias Harrington leaned back in his chair, puffing his pipe. Young men get restless in winter. Probably courting some girl in town. Whitaker grunted. Maybe, but I'll keep an eye on him all the same. In the big house, Mrs. Harrington's secret work intensified. Letters arrived hidden in shipments of cloth or tucked into hymnals brought by visiting preachers. She coordinated with a network stretching from Virginia to Pennsylvania, conductors on the Underground Railroad who guided freedom seekers under cover of darkness. One afternoon, she summoned Lila to her bedroom. I need your help with something delicate, Mrs. Harrington said, closing the door firmly. She drew the hollowed-out Bible from its shelf and opened it, revealing a folded paper inside. This must go to the old oak by the north fence tonight, she instructed quietly. Leave it in the hollow knot, low to the ground. Someone will collect it after midnight. Layla's eyes widened. Ma'am, this is. Mrs. Harrington placed a hand on her shoulder. I know what I'm asking, but I trust you, Layla. You're clever and careful, and I believe you want the same thing I do, that no person should live in bondage. Layla swallowed hard. She had never dreamed the gentle mistress harbored such courage. Why do you risk this? She asked in a whisper. Mrs. Harrington's gaze grew distant. My older brother ran north when I was a girl. Father disowned him for speaking against slavery. I've carried that shame ever since. This is my way of making amends. She pressed the paper into Layla's hand. Go after supper, when the house is quiet. Wear dark clothes. That night, heart hammering, Layla slipped from the quarters. Snow crunched softly under her feet as she made her way along the fence line, keeping to the shadows of the trees. The old oak loomed ahead, its gnarled trunk easy to spot even in moonlight. She knelt, found the hollow, and tucked the message inside. As she rose, a twig snapped nearby. Layla froze. From the darkness emerged a figure, tall, cloaked, face hidden by a scarf. You're not Evelyn, a low voice said, northern accent clear. No, sir, Layla whispered, terrified. Mistress sent me. The paper's there. The man nodded, glancing around. Good girl. Tell her the next group leaves in 3 nights. We'll signal with 2 lantern flashes from the ridge at midnight. Be ready. Before she could reply, he melted back into the trees. Layla hurried back to the quarters, pulse racing. She reported everything to Mrs. Harrington the next morning, speaking in careful whispers while dusting the parlor. The mistress's eyes shone with quiet triumph. Well done, child. You've just helped save lives. Over the following days, Layla became more involved. She carried messages hidden in laundry baskets, relayed signals by leaving certain curtains open or closed. Each task brought terror and exhilaration in equal measure. Elias noticed the change in her, distracted eyes, nervous glances. What's troubling you? He asked during their next meeting. She longed to tell him everything, but fear held her back. If he knew about the network, he might feel duty-bound to report it. Or worse, try to help and expose them all. Just winter blues, she lied, forcing a smile. He didn't press, but worry etched his face. Then came the night that nearly shattered everything. 3 nights after the message in the oak, the escape was set. 5 souls from Willow Creek, Two men, a woman, and her two young children were to slip away under cover of darkness, guided by the railroad conductor waiting beyond the ridge. Mrs. Harrington had arranged diversions: a sick horse needing attention in the far barn, a spilled lantern in the smokehouse to draw the night watchman. Layla's role was small but vital: leave the back gate unlatched after supper. As she crept toward the gate that evening, snow falling thicker now, a hand clamped over her mouth. She struggled, but strong arms held her fast. "Quiet!" Elias's voice hissed in her ear. He pulled her into the shadows of the tool shed. "What are you doing out here?" he demanded, voice low and urgent. I couldn't sleep," she stammered. His eyes narrowed. "Layla, don't lie to me. I've seen the signs. Curtains moved, messages passed. Something's happening tonight, isn't it?" Terror flooded her. "Elias, please." "Runaways?" he gasped, face paling. "You're helping them?" She couldn't speak. He released her, running a hand through his hair. "If Pa catches wind of this, or the master, it'll be the end. Whippings, sales, worse." Tears streamed down Layla's cheeks. "They're people, Elias. Mothers, children. They just want to be free." He stared at her, torn. Then his shoulders slumped. "I know," he whispered. "I know." Silence stretched between them. Finally, he reached past her and quietly unlatched the gate himself. "Go," he said hoarsely. "Help them. I'll stand watch here. If anyone comes, I'll say I'm checking the fence." Layla stared in disbelief. "You'd do that? Risk everything?" "For you," he said simply. "And because it's right." She touched his cheek briefly, then slipped through the gate into the night. From the ridge, two lantern flashes glowed faintly, the signal. The escapees made it safely away that night, vanishing into the snow-swept darkness toward freedom. But the cost was coming. Old Whitaker had seen his son near the gate. Suspicion hardened into certainty. The next morning, he marched to Master Harrington with accusations ready. And in the big house, Mrs. Harrington burned letters in the fireplace, preparing for the storm. Love and secrets had carried them this far, but the breaking point was near. Christmas Day 1852 dawned cold and gray at Willow Creek Plantation. A thin layer of snow blanketed the ground, turning the bare fields into a silent white sea. In the big house, Master Elias Harrington presided over a lavish breakfast: ham, biscuits, eggs, and strong coffee, while his wife moved through the rituals with practiced grace. The house slaves, including Layla, served in silence, their faces carefully blank. But the holiday cheer was a thin veneer. Old Whitaker had spent the previous night watching, waiting. When dawn broke and the head count in the quarters revealed 5 missing souls, the woman named Ruth and her children, along with 2 strong field hands, his rage ignited like dry tinder. By mid-morning he stormed into the master's study, hat in hand, face red with fury. "They're gone, sir. 5 of 'em, slipped clean away in the night. Gate was unlatched, tracks led in north through the snow till the ridge. Someone helped 'em, mark my words." Master Harrington slammed his fist on the desk, pipe clattering to the floor. "Help? From inside my own plantation? Impossible." Whitaker's eyes narrowed. "I saw my boy near that gate last night, skulking about like he had secrets." The master's face darkened. "Fetch him. Now." Within the hour, young Elias stood before the 2 men in the study, the air thick with tobacco smoke and accusation. "Did you have a hand in this?" his father demanded, voice low and dangerous. Elias met his gaze steadily. "No, Pa." "Liar," Whitaker roared, stepping forward as if to strike him. Master Harrington raised a hand to stop him. "Boy," the master said coldly, 5 valuable hands gone. That's thousands lost. If you know anything at all, you'll tell me, or face the consequences." Elias's jaw tightened. He thought of Layla, of the lantern flashes on the ridge, of the desperate hope in Ruth's eyes as she fled with her children. "I don't know anything, sir." Whitaker spat on the floor. "He's lying. Always been too soft. Moonin' after that house girl, Layla. I've seen the looks." Master Harrington's eyebrows rose. "The housemate? Is this true, Elias?" Young Elias paled but said nothing. The master turned to a house servant waiting outside the door. "Send for the girl. Bring her here." Lila was summoned from the kitchen, hands trembling as she wiped flour from her apron. Mrs. Harrington watched from the hallway, face pale, fingers clenched at her sides. When Lila entered the study, the men fell silent. She kept her eyes on the floor, heart pounding so hard she feared they could hear it. "Did you unlatch the back gate last night?" Master Harrington asked, voice like ice. "No, sir," she whispered. Whitaker stepped closer. "Don't lie, girl. We know someone helped those runaways." Layla remained silent. The master nodded to Whitaker. "Take her to the barn. We'll have the truth one way or another." As Whitaker seized her arm, Mrs. Harrington appeared in the doorway, composure cracking. "Elias, wait," she said, voice steadied despite her fear. "There's no need for that." All eyes turned to her. She stepped into the room, chin high. "The girl knows nothing, but I do." A stunned silence fell. Master Harrington rose slowly. "Evelyn, what are you saying?" "I helped them escape," she said clearly. "I've been helping for years. Messages, signals, safe passage. The Underground Railroad runs through Willow Creek because I made it so." Whitaker's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Young Elias stared at the mistress in astonishment. The master's face twisted in disbelief, then fury. "You? My own wife? Betraying me, ruining everything I've built?" "I've betrayed no one but cruelty," she replied, eyes blazing. "Those people you call property are human beings with souls as precious as ours. I could no longer stand silent while you profited from their suffering." He advanced on her, voice rising. "Do you realize what you've done? Patrols will come. Questions. My name dragged through the mud. We could lose everything. Better to lose wealth than our humanity," she said quietly. In the chaos, Layla slipped toward the door, but Whitaker caught her again. "And this girl?" he snarled. "She's part of it too, I wager." Mrs. Harrington turned to him. "Leave her be. She acted under my orders." Master Harrington rounded on young Elias. "And you? Did you know of this madness?" Elias hesitated, then stepped forward. "I knew some. I helped last night. Kept watch so they could get away safe." His father staggered back as if struck. "My own son." The room erupted, shouts, accusations, threats. Master Harrington ordered Whitaker to lock both Layla and young Elias in the smokehouse until he decided their fate. Mrs. Harrington he confined to her rooms, posting a trusted man at the door. As Layla was dragged away, she caught one last glimpse of Elias, his eyes full of anguish and apology. Mrs. Harrington reached out a hand toward her, whispering, "Forgive me, child." By evening, the plantation was in uproar. Word spread through the quarters like wildfire. Some wept for the escaped, others trembled at what punishment might fall. Patrols were summoned from town, dogs brought to track the runaways, though the snow had covered most traces. In the cold smokehouse, Layla and Elias were held in separate corners, wrists bound loosely with rope. A single lantern burned between them, casting long shadows. "I'm sorry," Elias whispered across the space. "I should have got you away sooner." She shook her head, tears falling. "You did more than anyone could ask. You chose right." He strained against his bonds. "I won't let them hurt you. Whatever happens, I swear it." Hours passed in tense silence. Outside, voices rose, Master Harrington arguing with his wife through her locked door, Whitaker demanding swift justice. Then, near midnight, footsteps approached the smokehouse. The door creaked open, revealing Mrs. Harrington, cloaked and carrying a lantern. Behind her, surprisingly, stood old Mariah, the elderly cook who had served the family for decades. "I bribed the guard with a bottle of the master's best brandy," Mrs. Harrington whispered urgently. "We don't have much time." She cut their ropes with a small knife. "Run," she urged, "north along the creek until you reach the ridge. A conductor waits with horses. He'll take you to the next station." Layla hesitated. "But you, ma'am, what will happen to you?" Mrs. Harrington smiled sadly. "My husband is furious, but he won't harm me, not truly. Society would never forgive him. I'll face disgrace, perhaps exile to my sister's home in Richmond. But I'll live. You must live free. Elias embraced her briefly. Thank you. For everything. Go now, she said, pressing a small pouch of coins and food into Lila's hands. And remember, love is the bravest rebellion of all. They slipped into the night, hearts pounding, following the frozen creek under a sky bright with stars. Behind them, Willow Creek receded, the only home either had ever known, now lost forever. Gunshots echoed in the distance as patrols stirred, but the young lovers pressed on, hand in hand, toward the promise of freedom. The storm had broken, secrets lay exposed, and the old world of Willow Creek would never be the same. The night air bit sharp and cold as Lila and Elias fled along the frozen creek bed, their boots crunching through thin ice and snow. Stars wheeled overhead, bright guides in a sky unclouded by smoke or lantern light. Mrs. Harrington's small pouch of food and coins bounced against Lila's side, a reminder of the sacrifice that had bought them these precious minutes of head start. They dared not speak until the plantation lights had faded entirely behind the ridge. Only then did Elias pull Lila close, his breath warm against her ear. We keep moving till dawn, he whispered. The conductor's waiting with horses 2 miles north, in the hollow by the old mill. She nodded, gripping his hand tighter. Fear clawed at her chest, but so did a wild, soaring hope, the first true taste of possible freedom. They pressed on through tangled underbrush and across frozen fields, avoiding roads where patrols might ride. The snow helped cover their tracks, but it also slowed them, turning every step into effort. An hour passed, maybe 2. Then, far behind them, dogs began to bay, deep, relentless voices echoing across the valley. Elias froze. Hounds. Pa must have roused the patrols already. Lila's heart sank. They'll track us easy in the snow. No, he said firmly. We cross water. The creek bends east soon, deep enough to break the scent. They veered toward the wider flow, wading into knee-deep icy current that stole their breath. Lila gasped at the shock, but Elias steadied her, half carrying her across to the far bank. They climbed out soaked and shivering, but the baying faded behind them, confused. Dawn was still hours away when they reached the ruined mill, an abandoned stone structure overgrown with vines. In its shadow waited a covered wagon and 2 sturdy horses. A bearded man in a Quaker hat stepped forward, lantern low. "You're the pair from Willow Creek?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Elias answered. "Sent by Mrs. Harrington." The man nodded. "Name's Josiah. Climbing back. There's blankets and a false bottom if we're stopped. We ride for the next station before sunup." They huddled together under rough wool as the wagon lurched forward, wheels creaking over rutted paths. Lila finally allowed herself to tremble, not just from cold, but from the enormity of what had happened. She was running, truly running. Elias wrapped his arms around her. "We're going to make it," he murmured, as much to convince himself as her. The journey north became a blur of hidden barns, sympathetic farmhouses, and tense nights on the move. Conductors changed at each station, Quakers, free black families, even a stern Methodist preacher who hid them in his church cellar. They traveled by wagon, on foot, once by river barge concealed under sacks of grain. Danger shadowed every mile. Twice patrols stopped their wagon, lanterns glaring into faces. Each time Josiah's calm answers and forged papers turned suspicion away. Once, hounds came close again, forcing them to hide in a swamp until the hunters passed. Through it all, Lila and Elias grew closer, their love tempered by hardship into something unbreakable. In quiet moments, curled together in haylofts or whispering by dying embers, they spoke of dreams they had never dared voice before. "I want to learn proper," Lila said one night in a Pennsylvania barn. "Read whole books. Maybe teach children someday." Elias smiled. "You'll do all that and more. And I'll build us a little house. Nothing grand, but ours. With a garden you can tend without anyone's permission." She touched the silver locket Mrs. Harrington had given her, still hidden beneath her dress. "Do you think she's all right?" He nodded slowly. "She's strong. Stronger than any of us knew." Weeks turned into a month. Winter deepened, snowstorms hiding their trail as effectively as any conductor's cunning. They crossed into free states, Maryland to Pennsylvania, then toward New York. Each border cross felt like shedding chains Lila had worn without realizing how heavy they were. But freedom's edge carried its own trials. Elias wrestled with guilt, leaving his father, abandoning the only life he'd known. Lila mourned the friends left behind in the quarters, wondering if punishment had fallen on them for her actions. One stormy night in upstate New York, as sleet rattled the shutters of a safe house, word reached them through the network. Patrols had lost the trail weeks ago. Master Harrington, humiliated by his wife's confession and the escape of his overseer's son, had chosen silence over scandal. No large reward was posted. Mrs. Harrington had been sent to live with relatives in Richmond, stripped of influence but unharmed. The plantation carried on, but whispers said the master drank more and trusted less. Lila wept quietly at the news, relief for the mistress, sorrow for the cost. Finally, on a crisp February morning, their conductor led them across a bridge into Canada. The St. Lawrence River glittered below, wide and free-flowing. "You're safe now," the man said simply. "British soil. No slave catcher can touch you here." Lila stepped off the bridge and sank to her knees in the snow, pressing her hands to the ground as if to feel the truth of it. Elias knelt beside her, tears freezing on his cheeks. They settled in a small community of formerly enslaved people near Dresden, Ontario. Elias found work as a carpenter. Lila took in washing and began attending reading classes run by missionary teachers. In time, they married in a simple ceremony under spring blossoms, with new friends as witnesses. Years passed. Children came, 3 strong sons and a daughter with Lila's bright eyes. They built the little house Elias had promised, with a garden blooming wild and free. Lila taught her children to read, telling them stories of courage, of a brave mistress who risked everything, of conductors who lit the way north, and of a young man who chose love over the world he'd been born to. She never forgot Willow Creek, nor the price paid for her freedom. Each year on the anniversary of their escape, she and Elias would walk to the river and stand in silence, remembering. Love had carried them through fire and frost. Secrets had shattered chains, and in a land where no one could own another, they built a life bright with possibility, the truest rebellion of all. Spring eventually returned to Willow Creek Plantation, but the winter of 1852 to 1853 had left scars that no warm sun could fully erase. Master Elias Harrington walked the veranda of the big house with heavier steps, his once commanding voice quieter now. The escape of 5 enslaved people, the confession of his wife, and the flight of his overseer's son had shaken the foundation of everything he believed secure. Neighbors whispered behind polite smiles. Business associates eyed him with caution. He never posted a reward, never sent professional catchers north. Pride, or perhaps a buried flicker of shame, kept him silent. Mrs. Evelyn Harrington was sent away in early March, escorted by carriage to her sister's home in Richmond. She carried only 2 trunks and the hollowed-out Bible that had once hidden her letters. At the gate she paused, looking back at the white columns and blooming magnolias one last time. No tears fell. Her face was calm, almost peaceful. In Richmond she lived quietly, attending church and aiding freedmen's schools in secret ways. Years later, when war came and Richmond burned, she worked tirelessly as a nurse, tending wounded soldiers from both sides with the same gentle hands that had once sealed messages of hope. Old Whitaker never recovered from his son's betrayal. He grew bitter and harsh, driving the remaining hands harder until Master Harrington finally dismissed him in 1855. Whitaker drifted from plantation to plantation, a hired overseer with a growing reputation for cruelty. He died alone in a roadside tavern in 1861, feverish and muttering his son's name. The quarters at Willow Creek carried on, songs rising softer now, eyes more watchful. Some whispered Lila's name with reverence. Others spoke of Mrs. Harrington as a guardian spirit. When Union troops marched through Virginia in 1864, many from Willow Creek walked away at last, following the soldiers north to freedom. Far across the border, in the quiet settlement near Dresden, Ontario, Lila and Elias built a life rooted in gratitude and hard-won peace. Their children grew strong and curious. The eldest son, named Josiah after the Quaker conductor, became a teacher. The second son, Elijah, took up farming on land they eventually owned outright. The third, little Samuel, showed a gift for carpentry like his father. Their daughter, Evelyn, named for the brave mistress who had set them free, grew into a bright, outspoken young woman who read widely and wrote letters to newspapers advocating for education and equality. Lila herself became a pillar of the community. She taught reading in the evenings to adults who had escaped later, her voice patient and encouraging. Around the hearth fire, she told her children the full story, not just the danger and flight, but the kindnesses that made it possible. The mistress who risked everything, the conductors who lit the way, the young man who chose love over blood and duty. Elias worked long hours with his hands, building homes and furniture for neighbors, but he always returned at dusk to sit on the porch with Lila, watching the sun set over fields that belonged to no master. In quiet moments he would take her hand and say, "We made it, didn't we?" And she would smile, the silver locket still around her neck, and answer, "Yes, my love, we did." They received one letter from Mrs. Harrington, forwarded through the network years after the escape. It was brief, written in her elegant hand. "My dear children, I think of you often and pray you have found the happiness you deserve. Know that my heart is lighter for having helped you, and that no regret touches me. Live fully, love deeply, and teach your children that courage lives in quiet choices as much as in bold ones. With affection always, E.H." Lila kept that letter folded inside the same Bible Mrs. Harrington had once used for secrets. When Evelyn was old enough, Lila passed both Bible and locket to her daughter, along with the story of a Southern lady who dared to do right in a world that called it wrong. As the decades passed, Lila and Elias grew gray together. They celebrated 50 years of marriage surrounded by grandchildren who knew nothing of chains except in the stories told by the fire. On the evening Elias passed peacefully in his sleep in 1908, Lila sat beside him, holding his hand as she had on that frozen flight north. She lived another 5 years, sharp-minded to the end, tending her garden and teaching the youngest ones their letters. When her time came in 1913, she was laid to rest beside Elias under a simple stone that read, "Lila Whitaker, beloved wife, mother, teacher." She walked from bondage into light and carried others with her. In the years that followed, descendants of Lila and Elias spread across Canada and the northern United States, teachers, doctors, builders, ministers, each carrying forward a legacy of quiet courage, fierce love, and the unshakable belief that no person should ever again be owned by another. And somewhere, in the soft Canadian wind rustling through maple leaves, one could almost hear the faint echo of old spirituals rising from long ago cotton fields, songs of sorrow transformed, by grace and daring, into hymns of lasting freedom. Thus ends the tale of Willow Creek, a story of hidden networks and open hearts, of forbidden love that defied a cruel world, and of ordinary people who, in choosing kindness, changed destinies forever.